Adam Peterman, welcome to the podcast, man. Your first podcast ever. I have the honor to host you. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, first one ever. Thanks so much. Excited to chat.
Yeah, man. Well, yeah, as we were just talking about, this is our first time meeting each other through the miracle of the Zoom platform. And I am so excited to get to know you, to learn a lot more about you, and learn at the same time that the audience is. To be honest, aside from this season, I have not, you haven't been on my radar, but of course this year has been a huge year for you. Absolutely amazing performances and super consistent. And it feels like it's the tip of the iceberg. It's the start of something really special. So I'm excited to have you on the show and talk all about it. But let's start from the beginning, man. Take us back. Where are you from? What was your childhood like? Tell us about Adam Peterman, kid. Yeah, tell us about it.
Well, thanks for all the kind words. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I live in Montana. I grew up in Missoula, Montana, and I live here now. But I just went to college in Boulder, Colorado, but that's about it. I've pretty much lived in Montana my whole life. If you've never been to Missoula, Montana, it's a pretty awesome place to be, like, into the outdoor world. From town, we have so many different hiking trails. If you like fishing, we have like all sorts of rivers you can fish, and like great mountain biking, peaks everywhere. So it's kind of like the ideal place, in my opinion, to be, and like such a great place to grow up.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, which is where you went to school.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, it's the same thing, man. It was like, as a kid, I went through phases where it was like, I'm too cool to go hiking with my dad, and now just looking back, it's like, wow, I was so lucky to grow up there. And it really has influenced the trajectory of my life and my career. In fact, I was just back in Boulder for Thanksgiving, and it was so funny just chatting with my mom again about my childhood and seeing where I am now. And one of the things that I just love, or just it fascinates me about my development as a human being, and specifically as an athlete, was just, growing up in the mountains, growing up sort of at altitude and in a very active community. And then my friends and I, basically the only way we moved around town, our mode of transportation was our bicycle. I grew up riding around, never raced, never viewed it as exercise. I only viewed it as transportation, but I really think it helped me to develop as an athlete. So talk about, what it was like growing up in Montana. Were you an outdoorsy kid? Did you grow up in an outdoorsy family?
Yeah. My dad and mom are pretty outdoorsy, but especially my dad, would take us on hikes, and every year we'd try to summit like a new peak. And so we'd always joke like, oh yeah, someday we'll do Mount Everest, like if we do enough peaks. But that was when I was a little kid. Like, I didn't understand that you could do a peak every year and not hit Mount Everest. We'd usually go backpacking like twice a summer, 3 times a summer, and then do that peak. But I guess when I was younger, the outdoors weren't really my main thing. Like when I was in middle school, I played a lot of music. Like I played the bass guitar in band, and I was really into solving Rubik's cubes, like just kind of fun stuff like that. But I ran a little bit when I was like before middle school. I think my mom had me do like a Runner's World, like couch to 5K plan. But yeah, other than that, I didn't actually really start running until middle school. I started in like 6th grade track, stuff like that.
Cool. Are you still musically inclined? Do you still play?
I pick it up every once in a while. Like I can still read sheet music, but I wish I did it more.
Yeah.
Like every time I do it, I wish I did it more. But if I don't have sheet music, I'm kind of lost. Mm-hmm. That's the weird thing. I think because of the band background, we weren't super creative. We would just like read music and play.
Yeah. Have you, this is a tangent a little bit. Have you seen this new Beatles documentary on Disney Plus?
Oh no.
I'll get back. Oh, it's so cool. Harmony and my wife started watching it last night. And as you talked about playing the bass, I was just admiring Paul McCartney, with his left-handed bass playing.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
It's really cool. You should check it out. But so you got connected with the sport of running in middle school. Was it an instant moment of, was it like a revelation, like a discovering of some innate talent that you had? Tell us about that.
I think like the first year I did it was not like, I remember doing the mile in 6th grade and one of the girls beat me, but she was really good. Like I remember I ran like a 6:10 or 6-minute mile and I was pretty happy. And then the next meet, like she beat me. And so I was like, I didn't really realize if I was good or not, but I stuck with it. I did cross country in 7th grade, and Missoula would have like a cross country team for all the middle schoolers. It wasn't just like each middle school. So it was kind of cool. You got to meet like all the kids from the other schools. But that's where I realized I might have had like a little bit of potential. Like I would usually win like the little meets we had in Missoula, but then you'd always hear of these kids who lived up in the Flathead, which is an area like maybe 2-3 hours north of us. And you'd hear like the times the kids ran in the Flathead. And I was like, it was just, they would blow me out of the water.
Really?
Like, whatever I ran, I think I ran like a 5:20 mile in 7th grade or 8th grade. And like these kids would be running like 4:45 or something. Huh. And so I'd always hear about them and be like, oh man, like I got a long way to go. So yeah, I don't know. In Missoula, I felt like I was decent, but yeah, you'd hear rumors.
So, but at some point you became very, very good. I mean, you went to the University of Colorado, which is one of the best programs around. So at what point was it like a very serious part of your life? And at what point was the talent really evident? Was it like the puberty time?
Yeah, probably around then. Like I was definitely pretty small as a kid. Like I remember being a freshman in high school and being like not even 100 pounds and like really? 5'3".
Because now I'm like you're a taller guy. Now. Yes, yeah. Me too, dude. Us big guys got to stick together. This is why I'm now a fan of yours, and I'm gonna root for you from now on.
Division.
Exactly. Yeah. Big guys got to stick together. So
that's awesome. So I ran for a program here in Missoula called Hellgate High School. That's the name of the high school is Hellgate. Pretty awesome name, but I was pretty lucky because the coach there, he was there for a while and he's still the coach now. And he's just awesome dude. Anders is his name. So Anders was the head coach, and then Mike Foote happened to be the assistant coach. Like his first year of assistant coaching was my first year of high school. And so I think I really lucked out having those two guys and then another assistant coach named M who like stuck with it the whole time that I was there. And I had like really consistent coaching, and it was just awesome. Like, and like I said, in middle school, I played music and did these other things, but I never really felt like I was very good at anything. And with running, like I felt like I was good at it. And like, just the team was so nice and everyone was like super supportive. Like it definitely felt like you immediately had 100 friends at Hellgate. Yeah. And I really liked that.
That's the miracle of sports, dude. That's why I think playing sports is so important for kids, because not only does it help you learn how to win and lose and be a good sport, but it also gives you friendships. It teaches you how to interact with people. And now there's like a bunch of research about how kids aren't enrolling in sports as much. And it sort of coincides with the rise of social media and spending our lives in digital space. Yeah. But it's like, man, without that in my life, I would have been an absolute basket case. I don't even know what I would have done,
Oh, dude. Yeah. Like, I mean, everyone's kind of awkward in middle school, but because I solved, like, I did the Rubik's Cube and all these other things, I made YouTube videos in middle school. Yeah. And I've since deleted them, but like even watching them a couple of years ago, like I couldn't even watch them. They were so embarrassing. Dude. And so I think running definitely helped like develop just a little bit of confidence, at least some social skills.
This is funny. I mean, it's just coming into my head, but the musical brain and the Rubik's Cube skill or talent. I mean, it's a indication probably that you have a brain that likes solving problems. Is this sort of something that translates into your running? Do you have a similar feeling with like your training and approaching different races about like how you could piece together the Rubik's Cube?
Maybe like I definitely write out my training and try to be like somewhat meticulous about it. So maybe that's it. Like it's nice too that running is so consistent. Like you have that consistency every day, but maybe the Rubik's Cube just brought this all on.
Look at me.
back in middle school.
I'm psychoanalyzing you here on the podcast. But
yeah, no, it might be true.
Yeah, cool.
That's hilarious.
Well, you mentioned our mutual friend, Mike Foote. Shout out to Mike Foote, one of the true gentlemen on the circuit.
Oh yeah. One of the greatest guys for sure.
One of the greatest dudes. And he posted something on his Instagram the other day, which I'm going to read out loud at risk of embarrassing you, but I think it's awesome. And then we can kind of go into it. Cause I think
for sure.
This is a good time to sort of put this on the table because it sort of encapsulates the entire arc of, at least from high school to where you are now. So This is again from Mike Foote's Instagram. And what he says is it's a bunch of pictures of you guys together back when you were younger. And it says, throwback to 2012, when this kid on the cross country team I assistant coached asked me to be a mentor for his senior project. His goal, a human-powered trip from Death Valley to the summit of Mount Whitney to raise funds for a program dedicated to getting youth outdoors. I, of course, said yes. And in the middle of December, we drove down to California. On day one, we biked our way 135 miles from Death Valley to the Whitney Portal. And after very little sleep and an alpine start on day two, we climbed to the highest point in the contiguous US on the winter solstice. Mm-hmm. Not bad for a 17-year-old kid. Yep. Well, he continues, almost a decade later, that scrawny high schooler has wrapped up one of the best seasons of any trail runner out there. A win and course record at the Speedgoat 50K, a second place at Pikes Peak Marathon, a win and course record at the USATF Trail Champs at the Moab Marathon, and a huge win, missing the course record by seconds at the JFK 50 this last weekend. Most admirably, he had this great season while remaining engaged in his community, working as an assistant coach for the same high school cross-country program where we first met on his first day of practice as a freshman in 2009.
Yep.
And also by working for our little events company at Runner's Edge, Montana, and helping so many in our community have fun and challenge themselves at our races. Congrats, Adam Peterman, on an incredible year. Can't wait to see what's next for you. Hashtag, this is the best part. Hashtag, they grow up so fast.
Oh, man.
Dude, I mean, I freaking love this, man. I freaking love it so much. And the photos that accompany it are special too. And I'll make sure to link to this particular post in the show notes so people can see this. But seriously, a goosebumps thing. And very kind words from Mike Foote, who's a legend, a veteran of the sport, and somebody who does embody the values and the ethos of the sport as well. But I want to go into basically all that stuff from the post. But first, tell us about this high school project from Death Valley to the summit of Mount Whitney. How did that come to be?
Well, Mike is just the best guy. Like, I couldn't have been luckier to have him be like starting his year as assistant coaching when I was starting high school. He would run a lot with us. And it was also as he came to be the ultrarunner that he is today, was like that time of his life too. I think his first 100-miler was my freshman year. And then by my senior year, I want to say he was like top 3 at UTMB one of those years. And so, he kind of came out of the woodwork and then just like rose to being one of the best in the world, like while we were on the same page at Hellgate. So it was really, really cool to see that. But back to the senior project. So every senior at Hellgate High School has to do some form of project, where you do something challenging, try to involve the community. And then at the end of the year, you give a big presentation and write a big report about it. And it's like a huge % of your government grade or something like that. I knew I wanted Mike to be my mentor. You have to select a mentor. I forgot to mention. Because I thought if he was my mentor, we'd be able to do something like pretty unique. Like some kids, like no judgment, they would just make like a go-kart for their senior project. And I don't really know how that would involve.
It's not as cool as summiting Mount Whitney. Come on, we can judge. We can judge. Yeah. That was like a bunch of kids at Hellgate would just make a go-kart. But anyway, so I reached out to Mike. We talked about it on Plenty of Runs, like what we wanted to do for a senior project. And he actually ended up coming up with the idea to try to do a self-powered, adventure from Death Valley to Mount Whitney. So Death Valley is like the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere. It's like 280 feet below sea level.
and then Mount Whitney is the highest in the lower 48. And they're really only like 145 miles apart, something like that.
It is kind of a crazy contrast.
Oh, yeah. It's super unique. So yeah, we went down there in December because that was really the only window that I could do it. Like, we didn't want to do it in the summer because it would be way too hot. And then cross country season in Montana goes until, at least for us, we'd usually run the Foot Locker regional championships, which is this weekend, early December. And so like our only window to do it before like there was a serious amount of snow was like that winter solstice day. So yeah, we went down there, and I mean, now that I'm an assistant coach helping at Hellgate, I think it's just so cool that he actually did this, like to just go with a bunch of high schoolers. It was me and my friend. My friend crewed us. He was like a freshman in college at the time. But yeah, it was Mike, who was like 28 years old, and then me, 17, and this other 18-year-old. And we drove down there, which takes like days from Montana, like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, down to Southern California.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like so amazing that he came and like supported us through all this. But yeah, it was a really cool project. Like, we did the thing and then used it as to raise money as a fundraiser for this organization called Outdoor Nation, which was an organization that tries to like allow underprivileged kids to go outside, and they had like camps and stuff for them. So it was really cool to like connect that back to this organization. But like the trip itself it like killed me. It was so hard. I wasn't used to anything like that. We biked the Badwater course.
Yeah.
So, it's 135 miles. It was December, so it wasn't even
huge net uphill, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's not like an easy ride. You sort of picture it as like this pancake flat thing, but
yeah, I mean, you go from below sea level to like 5,000 feet, and then back down to 1,000, and then like there's 3 passes pretty much. I mean, I think the whole thing has like 14,000 feet of climbing throughout the 135 miles. But I mean, classic high schooler. Like I'd been training for cross country, but like I hadn't been biking at all. I think I remember I went for a bike ride like the week of, because like I didn't want to bike during cross country season. Like cross country was the priority.
Of course.
And yeah, I just remember going on that bike ride, and like 40 miles in, you're at the top of a big pass where you've just climbed like 5,000 feet in a straight line up one of those, whatever the like fluvial fans in the desert.
Yeah.
I was just like destroyed 40 miles in. And I remember Mike just had to give me a lot of encouragement to keep going, because we're like 3 hours in and I'm already dying.
Well, dude, it's so cool, right? Like that you're now in the assistant coaching role that Mike held that same time, and maybe you'll have an opportunity to pay it forward. I see your bicycle behind you. Are you?
Oh yeah, we got a couple bikes here. Yeah. We're kind of in my gear room right now.
That's all. It's a good thing to have a gear room. Do you still do you ride at all?
Yeah, I really like riding. I try to go out like a couple times a week, and then if I'm not running very much or if I'm injured, like I'll usually just hop on the bike for most of my cross training. But yeah, I just went today for like a 24-mile ride, and I love biking. I think it's great for running.
I think it's so good. And I think it's so smart for you as, somebody who's at the very beginning of what should be an incredible career to, lean on that tool a little bit, don't feel like you got to be running 12 months out of the year. But like back to this adventure, like at this point in your career, you seem like just this uber talented runner, right? And this project is very much like a slow adventure. How did the adventure itself sort of influence your competitive aspirations, or did it? Do you think of yourself more as a runner or more of like an outdoor mountain athlete at this point?
I think of myself as a runner for sure. Like that was what I cared most about in high school. And then like in college, I ran for University of Colorado, and like that was all in on running for 5 years. Like you just live and breathe running.
Yeah.
So I definitely consider myself more as a runner. It's more been like in the last couple of years where I, like you mentioned, the bike, like I try to bike a lot more and like get out on cross country skis or backcountry skiing. And like, I've really liked kind of diversifying like that, but, rarely do I ever like race on those things. Right. Like sometimes just for fun, but yeah, definitely more running for sure.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, we did a lot of hiking when I was in high school. You know, like there's a peak that overlooks Missoula called Stewart Peak. And my friend and I decided we'd hike it once a month for the whole year in 2012. And it's not a big deal in the summer, but in the winter, it's like a almost 20-mile like snowshoe.
Yeah.
And so like I felt like we were always doing stuff like that. And so there's definitely like an adventure component, like even when I was younger.
Yeah.
But just like always fun stuff.
Yeah, those little things do harden you and give you interesting experience that it seems like is being applied now in your trail running career. Do you know Alex Nichols?
No, was he third or fourth at Western States this year?
No, I think he dropped out or no, I can't remember where he finished. I think he finished somewhere, maybe even in the top 10. Anyway, the point is, I was asking because he has a similar streak with the Pikes Peak, which is in his backyard.
Oh, really?
And you, of course, ran the Pikes Peak Marathon this summer. But I think Alex has like a streak of summiting Pikes Peak every month for like years now. So, of course, as you said, in the summer, it's no big deal. But
I bet some of those are so memorable.
For the next 5 or 6 months, it's like, oh God, I got to go back up there.
Oh, yeah. And it depends too. Like I noticed when we were doing Stewart Peak once a month, like sometimes you'd only have like a certain day to do it, like depending on our track season and like being in high school. And some days like it sucked. Like you would just do the whole thing and it was like you're inside a cotton ball, you know, like you never got a view or anything. Why
am I doing this?
It's like pouring rain. You're like, dang, I guess I just have to get it in April. Like, yeah, but it's fun. You remember those things for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about your relationship with Mike Foote, one of the great gentlemen on the circuit, as I mentioned, and a longtime friend of mine. It sounds like you guys still see each other around Missoula. I know he's an integral part of the running community up there. And maybe talk a little bit about how he in particular has maybe influenced your career, if there's any pieces of advice or, I don't know, habits that maybe you've picked up from him in observing how he's sort of orchestrated his athletic career.
Yeah, for sure. I think I definitely owe quite a bit to Mike. Like his influence on me and the other athletes in high school was huge, you know, like he's just such a nice guy, like such a good guy. And I think it makes a difference when you have like a professional athlete who's a trail athlete running with you, you know, a couple times a week. Like even when I was in high school, like trying to run fast, and then in college and beyond, like I saw how Mike trained and like the stuff that he did and just like how happy he was doing those types of races. And it was definitely something that I wanted to do. Like, and I think that's pretty special. Like, I don't think a lot of high schoolers want to be like a professional trail runner someday, but it was definitely like something that I thought would be really cool.
Wow.
You know, and then when I was in college,
that makes me so happy. Dude. Yeah. Oh, that makes me so happy.
Yeah, he had a huge influence. And then in college, like definitely, you know, at Colorado, we'd interact a lot with like pros training on the team still who weren't trail runners. And so I think I might've lost a little bit of it then, you know, like maybe I thought I'd go on to run the steeple or something after college, but especially in high school, like Mike was just this legend. Like, you know, he'd run these huge races. He lived in a yurt, like
which I think he still owns. I think he still owns the yurt.
It's still there. But like we would always try to like go up to his yurt and find out where it was. Like he would never tell us. And then finally he told us and we found it. And like he wasn't there when we biked to it. But you know, he's
Coach Foote. Well, shout out to Mike. Yeah, he and his wife Katie just had their first baby too. They swung by our house in Portland this summer when they were on a little bit of a van trip, and it's always great to see them. But
Oh,
he
right
he texted me today, dude. He must have gotten,
did he?
Must have gotten the beta that you and I were going to sit down for a conversation. And he wanted me to ask you about playing the didgeridoo. Before we go on to your career at the University of Colorado, we got to talk about the didge.
So embarrassing. So this goes back to middle school again. Like I mentioned the Rubik's Cube, but actually withheld some information, and that was the didgeridoo. Yeah, when I was in 6th grade, I don't know what prompted this, but I made a didgeridoo out of PVC pipe and like a beeswax mouthpiece.
Yeah.
So that's fine, like kind of weird. But then I chose one night to make a video on YouTube, like how to make a didgeridoo. And so I made this like 3-minute video. And it was kind of funny. I was in 6th grade. I had really, really long hair. So I made this video like talking about the didgeridoo, whatever, posted to YouTube. And then like on the comments, like immediately I just started getting roasted. People were like, who is that? Like, are you a boy or a girl? It was like kind of mean. And my mom was like,
yeah, the YouTube comment section is not necessarily the friendliest environment.
Oh no. And for some reason, like I just kept it on YouTube until I was in college, and I like checked on it periodically, but like it got up to like 90,000 views. And at that point,
it's viral, dude.
Yeah. At that point, I kind of like, I shut it down. I took it off YouTube because it was just like, it was one of those videos I was talking about earlier where I'd watch it and I'd just be like crawling in I just like couldn't watch it. It's so embarrassing.
Did you self-teach yourself like the circular breathing?
I learned that on YouTube as well.
Yeah. Dude, it's so crazy. People of your generation just learn things on YouTube. I actually have a funny anecdote about this as well. When I was in Japan for Ultra Trail Mount Fuji a few years ago, my friend Mael, an Australian guy who was crewing for me at the race, we were back in Tokyo afterwards before catching our flights in separate directions. And we were just sitting at a bar at a restaurant in Tokyo, and this young guy was bartending, and he spoke perfect English, but he's a Japanese guy. And we're like, oh, yeah, like thinking he must have come to the US to get an education or something like that, because he just spoke perfect English. So somehow it came up, like, how'd you learn English? And he was just like, YouTube. I was just like, I feel so old. Crazy. I feel so incredibly old.
You can learn
how to speak perfect English on YouTube, and look at you. You're learning circular breathing and making didgeridoos.
So. But then it comes to backfire and just embarrassing videos everywhere. But no, I try to, like, if something goes wrong with my car, I try to search YouTube first to fix it. But it definitely has its limitations. Like my Subaru has the classic problem of the Subaru where the head gaskets are leaking. And, I thought it would be a little bit beyond me to like try to fix that. But I looked it up on YouTube, and it's like a 3-hour video, and they're like removing the engine from the car. And I was like, oh, this is this is beyond the scope of the course.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that's hilarious. What a funny skill to have. And yeah, I mean, between being a great athlete, being good at the Rubik's Cube, and playing the didgeridoo, you should probably like go to Burning Man and,
oh God,
put all those skills together in some weird art exhibition or something. But let's go back to
Burning Man for a day playing the didgeridoo.
Yeah. Let's go back to where we left off. And that is sort of like the transition from the high school days to the University of Colorado, which, like you said, is an all-in type running environment, one of the best programs in the country. Talk about I guess I'm curious about the recruiting process. How'd you end up at CU? Like, it sounds like you had to be one of the best runners in the state of Montana if you ended up there. How'd you end up in Boulder?
Yeah. So I, like, kind of my junior year is when we started talking about running in college. This is like with the head coach and Mike, a little bit, and the other coaches. But I knew I wanted to run in college probably by junior year. Like, running was definitely what I was interested in the most. And I was one of like the top guys in Montana, but not really in the region. Like I was third at the state meet my sophomore and junior year in cross country. And then I think like fourth in track in the 2-mile or something like that. But, I actually didn't really have a very good track season my junior year. And I feel like, at least for recruiting, like there's a lot of emphasis put on that year because it's like track your senior year, you've usually chosen where you're going to go. And yeah, you know, I ended up like training too hard as like a little high schooler my junior year. We went to Arcadia, which is like that's a big invitational down in California. And our team went down there. It was like this big deal to go there from Montana. And this was my junior year, but I was trying to break 9:20 in the 2 mile. Like our school record was 9:17. And so I thought I could go down there, maybe break 9:20, get the school record, and then like be recruited by colleges. But like I hadn't been feeling very good in training, like really tired all the time. Ended up running 9:20 pace for like all but the last 800 of that race. And then I just ran like a 10:05. Yeah. Like wheels completely fell off, and I had to get like carried off the track. But long story short, like something was wrong. Like I went back to Montana and like it just felt like something was wrong with me. And I ended up getting my iron tested, and my iron was like my ferritin was a 3.
It's like critically low.
It was horrible. Yeah, I was anemic, and so yeah, that track season ended up like not going so well. I think eventually I broke 9:30 in the 2 mile, like by the time we got my iron levels up. But all this to say, like by my senior year, it really seemed like I knew I just had to do well in cross country as a senior because I had like no credentials to be recruited. So yeah, I just like tried to train a little bit smarter, like be more consistent. And like, honestly, I think I was taking it too seriously as a junior. And by senior year, I like really tried to relax and like get rid of some race anxiety I was having and like just enjoyed running with my teammates. And that worked like way better for me. So by senior year, there was me and then these 2 other guys, the ones who I mentioned earlier from middle school up in the Flathead. Yeah. So those guys ended up being like my high school rivals. Zach Perrin was one of them and Troy Fraley was the other. But yeah, so it was kind of all like the 3 of us would always go at it in cross country. And by our senior years, like we were all pretty close. I think Zach was a lot faster than us like earlier on, but yeah, anyway, so my senior year. Didn't he go
to see you too?
Yeah, he was my roommate.
Really? Yeah. Oh, interesting. The Flathead rival. You guys end up in. Did you? Was there any fisticuffs battling over?
Oh man, I mean, sometimes like classic college roommates, we get like all mad, but no, we were like brothers, you know, like So
eventually, you had a good cross country season your senior year at Hellgate, and you ended up getting recruited to CU.
Yeah, things just came together. Yeah, I remember I said.
I mean, it must have been a great season, right? Because CU is the best program in the country, you know, with only a couple of rivals, right?
Yeah, I was kind of lucky because Zach was getting recruited by so many other programs. And so I ended up beating him a couple times. And I think because I beat him, that was like a metric that they could see. Yeah. But I also emailed them too, you know, like I reached out to Colorado in like the beginning of that season. I emailed like the assistant coach and he just pretty much emailed back and was like, here's the times you need to hit if you want to run for us. And it was like quite a lot faster than I'd run. But then I beat Zach and I ended up getting the state record in the 3 mile, which now they run the 5K, but back then we ran the 3 mile. But I ended up running like, I feel like it was one of the best races of my life to this day. Like, I don't know what got into me, but it was like me and Zach head to head. And I ended up like beating him at this race over in Helena, Montana, and ran like a 14:26 for the 3 mile at 4,000 feet. Like, I don't know how I did that even today.
Dude. Crazy.
So how was that race kind of got it going?
How was your collegiate career? Like, do you look back on it with pride? I mean, were you one of the top performers on the team? Honestly, I don't pay attention to collegiate running that much.
I think I have like a pretty standard college career, like story that most people have, but I loved running for Colorado. Like that was my dream, was to run for them. And so getting to do it was like so cool, but it was really, really hard.
Yeah. What's it like competing for a program like that?
It was just like, you're in it, like the coach would always say, it's like you're in the lion's den, because when we worked out, like there's 10 of us, and on any given day, someone feels really good and they're pushing the pace. And like I was there during a really good time at Colorado. Like my freshman year and sophomore year, we won nationals in cross country.
Sweet. That must have been fun.
This is crazy. Yeah. And then, we were eighth when I was, fifth year, actually running again for the team, but like, it was just hard, it's hard to stay healthy. And so I found that like when I was healthy and able to run consistently, things went pretty well. And like, that was really, really fun. But then I would also have periods where like my fourth year, like I just blew up my Achilles and like couldn't really get a hold on it like the entire time.
Yeah. I just had Ruth Croft on the podcast, a Kiwi trail runner, awesome athlete, but she actually went to the University of Portland.
Right on. I visited there too.
Oh, cool. Yeah. But she was saying the same thing, in that you're not only competing against the other universities, but you're really competing for the spots on the team like every day. And so even the easy runs become like a little bit too competitive, and then you get injured, and then it sort of becomes not necessarily always a healthy training environment. Did you have a similar feeling at the University of Colorado?
I felt like our men's team was pretty chill for that. And maybe that's just my perspective, because I was like, usually I was on varsity if I was like running healthy. But yeah, like definitely for the kids who were like on that cusp, like it definitely gets competitive. But I think we had a pretty good team culture from that standpoint, but it's hard, like it's a balancing act between like during the workouts, like, do you hit the assignment or do you go faster to like if you were one of those kids, like
to edge out one of the other guys.
Yeah.
It's good to have training partners, but I mean, sometimes if you're doing all your workouts with the same guys and you're competing for spots on the team or whatever, I could see that would,
that was like the story of my sophomore year, was like, I just really wanted to be on the varsity squad because I'd redshirted the year before. And, like I would get assigned workouts with like the B team pretty much. And I would always just try to like blow it up. Like, I bet those guys were just pissed at me.
Just like, come on, Peterman, dude.
Yeah. And then he'd like halfway through the workout, put me up with the varsity guys. And like, I couldn't hang at all. These were guys who were getting like top 10 at NCAAs in cross country and just doing like ridiculous workouts.
Yeah. Cool.
But I mean, it was really cool. Like running for Colorado was the dream. I got pretty injured like by the end, but like
you think that's just like accumulated years of tons of workouts and always being on as a,
I think I just got into a cycle of it. Yeah.
Cause it is like just so serious at that level, right? Like, especially if you're doing track, cross country and indoor, you're racing hard year round basically. Right.
Yeah. I think exactly it. Like just the intensity is so high.
Yeah. So then post collegiately, what happened? What was your approach to the sport of running in general? Like, did you entertain going pro on the road and track circuit? Were you being recruited by brands at that point? And I mean, basically, how'd you end up on the trails? Cause you're like 26 now, cause you're not that far. You're not that far removed from ZU, right?
Yeah. It was, I guess I graduated like 3 years ago. I graduated in 2018.
You landed on my radar this year, basically. So maybe tell us what you've been up to in the last 3 years since you graduated from CU to now being like one of the true rising stars of trail running.
Yeah, I guess when I graduated, that, like I said, my Colorado story was like kind of it was great at the beginning, and then when I had those periods of injury, like I did not PR when I was a senior in track. Like in the steeple, I ran 8:43 as a sophomore, but then as a senior, I was like 8:53 in the 3K. So like early on at Colorado, I thought I had a trajectory of being like one of the best steeple chasers in the NCAA. And then like by my senior year, I was just like happy to run pain-free. So yeah, like what I had dealt with always was an Achilles injury. And like, even when I finished at college, like my last meet, like my Achilles was hurting pretty bad. And like from then, which was May, like I don't think I ran until like August or September. Like I was pretty much done. And that is the longest I've ever gone without running, you know, because it was like, it's always been something I love to do. Like even outside of being competitive, but yeah, like I pretty much was done. Like I didn't really have aspirations of being competitive anymore. And like, it sounds kind of sad saying, but I was excited to do other stuff, you know.
Yeah.
I was excited to maybe like get back to cycling and like move back to Montana and go camping with my friends. And
yeah,
like that was such a big part of my life in high school, was being like outdoors.
Yeah.
And in college, there wasn't really enough time to do that.
Yeah.
You know, like we lived in Boulder, which is amazing, and we got to run in some really cool places, but like I've climbed 2 14ers.
Yeah.
You know, and when I committed to Boulder, I was like, I'm doing all 54.
I'm doing everything.
Like I'm doing all of them.
So I guess, yeah. So how'd you end up starting to run trails? Like, was that sort of a rebirth of your desire to run and compete? Talk about that.
Yeah, I think, I think it was like, I wanted to run, like if you're just living in Missoula as someone who's not like running in high school or college, like most of the people are running the trails because it's crazy. Like we have so much access just like right from town to everything. But like, I think I went back and forth a little bit with like what I want to do running, but like, you know, I took all that time off. And then when I started running again, my Achilles still hurt. Like it was crazy. That thing was painful for like 2 or 3 years. And so I ended up seeing someone at UM named Rich Willie, but like this guy just took me under his wing and showed me like these really simple, like weighted eccentric loads, like heel drops pretty much with heavy weight. And that was something like never even tried in college.
Yeah.
And after 4 months of consistently doing that, like it was better.
Wow.
And that really got me fired up because like, I remember in college, we had like an exit interview with Wetmore, the coach, Mark Wetmore.
Yeah.
And I was 22 years old and he's like, well, you did everything your body could do. And I remember I left that like being so sad and like pissed off because I'm like, I'm still 22.
I gave my body to this program, for God's sakes.
Yeah. And so I was like pretty floored to actually be training and running again, pain-free. And at that point, like I was working at a gear shop in town and like I got backcountry skis and I'd started doing that again. And I was like pretty excited to be doing stuff again, like what I'd always wanted to do at Colorado, but like couldn't because we're just training so hard for other events.
Yeah. So how'd you get into the trails and how'd you get connected with Hoka?
Yeah, I ended up signing up for the Moab Trail Marathon in 2019. It's the USATF Trail Marathon Championships. And like, I think as a person coming from the like road and track background, I saw like the USA Championships and like, I'm like, oh, this is the most competitive race in the US. Like, you know, you have no idea. So I ran that. I guess I should go back the week before I did the USA Trail Marathon Champs. I tried to run up Mount Sentinel, which is just like a local peak in Missoula. Tried to run up that as fast as I could. And it's a race that's put on. It's called the Mount Sentinel Hill Climb. Yeah. But other people on Strava have like tried to do it as a KOM. And the guy who held the course record was Jim Walmsley.
Yes.
And he like went
who
for
also
it.
Used to live in Montana.
He used to live out in Great Falls.
Yeah.
But so I did the Mount Sentinel Hill Climb route like all out as a time trial before Moab, and I ended up beating him by about a minute. And when that happened, I was like, oh shit, like I actually might be good. Yeah. Like I didn't, you have no metrics in trail.
Yeah.
But again, like I didn't know how fit he was then. And people said he did it when it was like 100 degrees, of course. So like my conditions
legendary.
were
Yeah. So then you go to Moab and you won it, right? In 2019. Yeah. And that was effectively your first real trail race, huh?
I had run the rut kind of for fun before that, but yeah, that was like the first time I tried to be.
50K or the 28K?
I did the VK and the 28K, but it went poorly. I just I hadn't been running very much that summer. I was working for the Forest Service, and I think like
let's talk about Moab though. I mean, like, you had a little bit of experience with the rut, but it didn't go well. You smashed the Sentinel
I was like
Hill
fourth
climb
woman overall, I think, at the rut. Like that was way back.
Right. Well, but then you smashed the Sentinel Hill climb and you win the USATF Marathon Championship at Moab. Is that when you got connected with Hoka? And was that the point at which you kind of made the determination that you were going to kind of commit to the trail running side of the sport rather than something else?
Yeah, there was kind of a year removed, because so it was 2019 I won in Moab, and then like the next year was 2020, so like obviously racing wasn't really the priority anymore. So yeah, it was funny, like, so at that time my girlfriend, who runs for Hoka as well, she used to run for Colorado too. And she was really good. She was like an 11-time All-American at University of Colorado. So she, right after college, ran for Northern Arizona Elite, the Hoka team in Flagstaff. And so I was actually like, during the time of the Moab Marathon, that fall of 2019, Erin, her name's Erin. Erin had been going through like quite a bit of injuries with the Northern Arizona Elite team. Like she loved the team, but just wasn't able to really run anymore. Like she wasn't able to race, had some weird back injury. But I was planning on moving to Flagstaff, like with her. That's where they were based out of. And then I don't know, like sometime in October, November, she called me and was like, "Hey, I just quit the team." And this was like all out of the blue to me. Like I had no idea this was happening. And I was like, "All right, I support you. But like, am I still moving to Flagstaff? Like, do you want to be in Flagstaff anymore if you're not part of the team?" And so ultimately she chose to move to Missoula. And that was also, so I chose to stay in Missoula. Mike Foote, who works for Runner's Edge events and puts on the rut, they hired me at that time too. And so it all kind of came together for Erin to move to Missoula, me to stay here and actually get more of a like flexible job that worked with running. And then I won Moab. And so I think that really that just sealed the deal on me, like actually trying to go for it.
Yeah.
Because like Moab had gone well, and now I had a job that worked with running, and my girl, I wasn't in a long distance relationship anymore. Like she lived here.
So this is something I'm curious about as somebody who's a student of the game and somebody who is an observer of the overall environment and industry situation in the sport of running and trail running. And I'm curious to get your take on this as somebody who's been on both sides of the world, or both sides of the, sort of road and track side of the sport, collegiately and now professionally in trail running. And it's my feeling that like I'm totally confused as to why more people like you aren't just coming to trail running by the hundreds, by the dozens.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Because now trail runners are making a decent living. The top athletes, you can make probably close to as much as most of the good road runners. Somebody like Galen Rupp is probably out earning most people, but probably not out earning a guy like Kilian Jornet, or probably not even out earning by much, total speculation. Somebody like Francois Dane or Jim Walmsley or Courtney DeWalter, those sort of like transcendent paradigm changing athletes are of course in a different category. But it's my feeling that, our sport is so freaking cool, and there's got to be so many kids coming out of these great D1 programs who would get like a meager salary trying to race, on the 10K, 5K Diamond League circuit, or even in the marathon, when they could come into trail running and earn like a really good living. Is that?
I don't understand it either. Like that's been something I think about a lot, is like, why aren't more people who ran like, I ran, like I was saying, 8:43 in the steeple, which was like 20th in the country that year, like not that great. And like, I don't know. I just feel like that type of running really translates well to trail.
No doubt. Same with cross country. I mean, it's like,
yeah, like there's so many dudes in the NCAA who are like monsters aerobically.
Yeah.
And I don't know why so many just like gut it out on the roads just to do okay. And like in poverty,
I don't know. I just love too,
like that?
In poverty, that's not like they're really even making a real living.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you're like, I know the numbers probably have changed, but like in 2016 or something, like one of our post collegiates got 8th in the steeple at the USA Track and Field Championships, like the Olympic trials, and he made $200. And that was the only race he did all year where he'd made money. And we're like, dude, that's awesome. But like, what how is this going to support you? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, man. And I really do think that this is an important moment in the history of the sport, and that, people like you can help usher in a new generation and to help open the eyes. I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting to race on the track. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a great road marathoner. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think, people like us who are drawn to the outdoors, who are drawn to the mountains, who are drawn to open spaces, but who also like to compete. It's like, man, it's at the point now where you can earn as good of a living or better racing on the trails than you can trying to slog it out as a road athlete. So anyway, another discussion for another day. I want to, before we sort of go way too long, I want to talk about your season, dude, because your season was an absolute freaking mind blower this year. You smashed it. And I guess, let's start with the Speedgoat 50K, of course, one of the hardest and most competitive 50-kilometer races in the country in Snowbird, Utah. How did that race get on your radar? I think it was your first 50K. And of course, like coming from the track cross country background, of course, there's races like Way Too Cool and Chuckanut and many others that would theoretically suit your skill set a little bit better. Why did you choose Speedgoat?
I'd actually been signed up for Chuckanut in 2020. And then that was the year. It was kind of out there where COVID started, was at least in the US, like as far as we knew, it was like near Bellingham. So I think it just turned out to be that way just based on the timeline of COVID. Like I was trying to do races, but like the rest of us, they were getting canceled. And, but yeah, like, I joined Hoka in 2020, and like within the contract, there's a set of races that like might give you a bonus. And so I was just selecting races from there, and like Speedgoat looked awesome. A couple of my friends in Missoula have run it, and I was just excited to try doing Speedgoat and then Pikes Peak as like the big races of the summer. So, I think I'd mainly just heard about it from guys in Missoula though. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and of course you won the race and broke the course record, which was a record held by Jim Walmsley. And you're now in very elite company. I think only you and Hayden Hawks have ever taken down a record held by Jim Walmsley.
Oh, really? And I didn't know that.
And Hayden also, I'm just thinking of this now, ran his first 50K at Speedgoat and was a total undiscovered talent. And now, of course, and now he's gone on to be, one of the best athletes in the world. But I mean, it must have been a pretty special moment for you to cross the finish line, breaking Jim Walmsley's course record in your first 50K on a very hard mountainous course. How did that result impact your view of yourself and your capabilities as an athlete within our sport?
Yeah, I was honestly really surprised to get his record. I was just really surprised that it happened, because I think I'd been used to like faster courses or kind of like the background on track where it's like when you're about to PR or win a race, like you're flying, like you're moving pretty fast. But there were moments in Speedgoat where I thought I'd like completely ruined the race. I thought I'd gone out too hard. I mean, you know how it is, like Speedgoat was so technical. There were points where I'm like walking, and like I try to not hike during training. Like I try to run the hills. And I was just like hiking, and I was like, oh God, like this is going backwards now. And I remember with like 8 miles to go, some guy was like, "Hey, you're a spectator was like, hey, I think you're on pace to break Wamsley's record." And I literally said to him, I was like, there's no way. Like, cause I just felt like I was hiking just as fast as anyone would who was like on a hike that day on some of those climbs. But that's just how it goes when you're that deep in the race. Like,
yeah, dude,
the descents were still going well and stuff, but I was pretty shocked to break his record, and it was only by like 20 seconds or something like that. So,
yeah. But how does that impact your psychology, man? I mean, because Jim is one of the best of all time, like that dude is a freak. And I was actually there when he broke the record at Speedgoat. And I'm just like, dude, he's so freaking good. So to be at a point already, you're 26 years old, man. Like you're breaking Jim Walmsley's record at Speedgoat, and you've got a decade in front of you at least of high level competition. How are you viewing your position in the sport right now? And how does it impact your like self-belief, self-confidence in your abilities?
I just really love trail running. Like I love it so much more than I loved running for Colorado, but I think my headspace and like how I would get before races, like it always seemed like do or die. Like I was so nervous before races, and especially like towards the end of my career as time was running out. And I just feel like trail running and like getting this deal with Hoka kind of gave my running like a second life.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, like just this year and kind of my headspace with trail running this year has been, I don't know, it's just like really positive, and I like it so much more. Like I just love it.
You make me so happy, bro. Oh, it makes me so happy. And yeah, I mean, it's to be so talented, but also to have that love of the game and that sort of like, the humility to understand that, it is just the beginning for you, and that, you will be sort of standing on the shoulders of those who come before you. And I think Jim's like 31 now and still has a ton of time left in his career. And he's also a super friendly guy who, he said the same stuff is like, well, I feel like I have to go try and go for like the 100K road world record, but like his heart's on the trails, it just makes me so freaking happy. Makes me so happy.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. I guess I didn't answer your question though, but like, I think I just, right now with trail running, like I try to just sign up for races that get me excited. And then do my best to execute either like just running them really hard or like winning them if that's a possibility. But that's kind of been just like my mindset now. Cause I think, like just college, I didn't have really the right mindset going into it, and trail's kind of given that back for sure.
Awesome. So like the only blip on your racing resume from this season was a second place finish at the Pikes Peak Marathon.
Pikes Peak.
So I don't know, like obviously, it's James Demore or James Seth?
Yeah, Seth Demore.
Seth Demore, excuse me.
I think James might be his brother.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah. So Seth Demore won the Pikes Peak Marathon. I think it's at least his second victory there.
Yep.
You were a little ways back of him.
He killed me. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm curious about that, right? Because like you still finished second place. It's not like it was a bad performance. I can't remember. I think you were like 7 or 8 minutes behind him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was there a challenge there that you were dealing with? I know coming from Missoula, trying to go to 14,000 feet is not necessarily as easy as it is for somebody like Seth who lives in Colorado.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about that race a little bit. What'd you learn there?
Well, it's kind of funny. Like I was just talking about headspace, but like Pikes Peak was the race I cared the most about for the whole year. I was like, well, it has such a cool history.
Legendary.
And the course record there is insane. Like Matt Carpenter ran up to Pikes Peak in 2:02. And then I think he did the marathon in like 3:18.
Yeah.
Both. And so I've always felt like, I felt like
records
that record
that people view as unbreakable. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And so I just kind of wanted to see like where I stood against that metric. And I got smoked. Like, on the day, like everything had been going well. I was heat training a lot in Missoula because I knew that heat training had like a similar effect to you as altitude. But yeah, it just didn't work out. Like, I think I went out too hard because within the first mile, I felt like kind of lactic and,
dude, that's the altitude. That's the altitude.
Yeah.
I guarantee. I mean, they do say that there is a carryover in that adaptation between heat training and altitude training, but my guess is if you were really acclimatized, it would have been a different ball game.
Because I went down there like 2 or 3 days before. Like I just didn't have the time with work.
It's not enough
to go
it's
down
not enough
there,
to go to 14,000 feet. No.
Oh,
not when you live at like 3,000 or whatever Missoula is at.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of what happened. Because usually, like, I feel pretty good. I usually feel like I'm a good climber, and then on that day, like, it literally felt like I was going easy day pace or slower, like up that mountain. And it wasn't really until I want to say halfway down the descent where I actually like got back into second, but I was sitting in fourth for like most of that race. But that race is cool. Like, I definitely someday would love to go back, and maybe if I had like the means to spend a few weeks down there before and check out the course more and acclimatize. But yeah, definitely want to give that one another go.
Heck yeah, dude. Well, and then you repeat at Moab, which was another awesome performance for you, taking home your second USATF championship at the Moab Trail Marathon. I don't know if there's anything you want to mention from that before we spent some time on JFK just a couple of weeks ago. Is there anything from Moab you think is worth mentioning? I know you broke the course record, and I think like you had an awesome race.
It was a really fun day. I mean, I just love going down to that race. I think I get kind of sentimental about it because it was like that first time I won there. Like, I was just so happy and like so emotional.
Yeah.
Because I've been injured for so long in college, like to finally do well at something again was like awesome. That was 2019.
Yeah.
No, I think the only thing so I ran that race actually in 2020 as well. And I ran like the exact same time. I ran 2:57.
So have you won it 3 times now?
Yeah.
Okay. So 3-peat. Awesome.
3-peat. Yeah. But when I ran 2:57 in 2019 and 2020, like I was completely spent. Like 2019, I bonked, I think, right at the end. Like with a mile to go, it was just horrible.
Yeah.
So I think this year I felt really confident, and it was really fun racing with Max King and Eli Hemming, like a newer guy in the trail game. But it was fun running with those guys because I felt like Max King like never gave up. Like I thought I dropped him at mile 13 and had like this gap in him after this big climb, and he like caught back up at 17, and he just made it super fun. And like, I never thought I'd run that fast on that course. And I know trail, like, time isn't everything in trail, but I feel like as someone who's done that course 3 times now, I'm like, I don't know if I could run many sections of that faster than that. And it was really fun. Like, it was fun to have that competition.
So how did this year's time compare to the last 2 years?
This year was 2:51.
As opposed to what?
2:57 the other 2 times. Yeah.
Wow, dude.
So I might have to retire from Moab now with that.
3 in a row. Yeah. Step away. Step away. Yeah. You don't want to force it too many times. Go out on a high note, or at least take a year off. It's like Jim Walmsley. Jim Walmsley, after his 3-peat at Western States, he's like,
goes to Moab.
I think I'll take the year off from Western States.
That'd be so sick.
Well, let's talk about JFK, dude. This was just a couple of weeks ago, I think. Yeah, maybe 2 weeks ago. One of the oldest ultra marathons in the United States, obviously a legendary race, a race that many of the best of all time have tackled over the course of their career. And again, you won and narrowly missed Hayden Hawk's course record, which he took from Jim Walmsley. So now you guys are the top 3 fastest guys ever on that course in a race that's been around for like 55 years or something like that. Talk about your experience at JFK. And I'm also just like very curious now how you view your strengths and weaknesses as an athlete, because obviously like Speedgoat is a real mountain race, right? And you take down the course record there. JFK is one of the faster 50 milers in North America. I think your winning time was, under 5:20.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, with the contrast of those 2 types of events, one being hyper mountainous, one being a faster, flatter course, and you're performing very well at both of them. Talk about that race specifically and how you're thinking about your skill set as a trail runner, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are.
Yeah. With JFK, I think JFK and Speedgoat, I guess I trained a little bit differently for. Like, with JFK, I feel like I had like usually one session a week where I was actually trying to run like sub 6 minute pace or something like that. Just kind of like either a marathon type workout or just running 6 minute pace for 20 miles, something like that. And for Speedgoat, I actually didn't really do any of that. Like it was all just usually pretty hilly runs.
Yeah.
So I think that's how I was able to do both because, they're pretty far separated. Like Speedgoat was in July and this was in November. But yeah, I guess I don't know like what I view my strength as in particular, like, in the sport, like, yeah, it's all like so different. You could do like a VK if you wanted to, or you could run like a flat 100-miler, or a really mountainous 100-miler. Like, I view myself as a pretty good climber, but like, I definitely want to see what I can do if I go longer as well. So as for next year, I guess I'll just keep signing up for races and like see if I can do well in them. But I guess I didn't really answer your question. I guess I don't know what my strengths would be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, clearly you've got a lot of strengths, man. It's like, if you can compete like that at both those different races. I mean, I think that there's only very few people in our sport and really in the history of our sport who have the talent and range like that, who can win and break a course record at something like Speedgoat and then turn around 6 months later and run one of the fastest times ever on a very fast, flatter course. I think Jim in particular is an anomaly, somebody who has the talent to win Comrades, Western States, and UTMB. He's got the skill set, I think, to do all that. And of course, he's only won Western States at this point, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got the other two. And I feel like you're a similar athlete, and actually it's kind of interesting too, because Jim's a taller guy and he's a great climber. Yeah. You're 6'3" and you're an insane climber. I'm 6'3" and I'm a freaking slowpoke on the full gas uphills. So, I don't know. I mean, you're 26, you're somewhat new to the game. You're still learning what your strengths and weaknesses are, but JFK must have been another, really solid sort of confidence booster at this early stage in your career. Maybe talk a little bit about like how you approach training. Do you have a coach? Do you follow a plan? And maybe give us any glimpses, any specifics, tangible things that you do in training that you think has helped in this early stage in your career?
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't have a coach. I just coach myself. I kind of I want it to be that way. Like I think I learned a lot at Colorado being coached by Mark Wetmore. Like he's one of the smartest guys I've ever met and great coach. And I found what worked for me there and what kind of didn't work. And I think in trail, it's a little more simple to coach yourself compared to if you were running like a 5K, like the 5K, there's all these different components of being like aerobically strong, but being able to buffer lactic and stuff like that. And I feel like in trail, it's not as much. I've just tried to slowly increase my volume and be like really careful about it just since I had that history in college of being injured. But like going into JFK, I ran like about 105 miles a week for 6 to 8 weeks. And then that would have between like 12 to 18,000 feet of climbing. And then, like I said, one session per week at 6 minute pace or kind of below. And like, I put everything on Strava, just like a lot of people, and enjoy that.
I can't wait to go follow you.
Oh man, I think I follow you.
Dude, I have not been running, man. Hopefully someday I have the time to start actually training again, but
it's a good time.
But I'll have to go look at your profile and get myself motivated to get my ass off the couch.
I have hardly moved in 2 weeks. So,
that's curious though. I mean, like, have you ever felt the urge to like get a little guidance or direction in your training? Aside from Mike Foote, are there other guys who you have sort of looked to as mentors at this point in your career? Like how are you learning right now?
Yeah, like I definitely have asked Mike for advice in the past, usually about like what type of races to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then my girlfriend, Erin, like we bounce a lot of ideas off of each other. She has a coach. But it's helpful to have like those people to talk to. And yeah, like looking at other people on Strava early on when I started coaching myself, I read like, what is that book called? It's like Arthur Lydiard's book. It's like the first book about training. I read that, but actually that didn't really help. But yeah, I think I just see like, I know how a lot of marathoners train, and like I follow a lot of trail runners on Strava and just kind of base it off of that. But
yeah,
man, a lot of it's just been by feel, you know. I sign up, like if I know what my calendar is, I'll like build a plan around that and know what type of workouts I want to do for the race, and usually have like a really broad idea, like a 10,000 foot view.
Yeah.
And then each Monday of the week, I'll like write the training for the week, depending on what my schedule is.
Cool.
That's kind of how I usually do it. And it's worked right now. Like I'm open to getting a coach maybe if things weren't working, but like I like what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. Well, good for you, man. So let's talk about the future, dude. I feel like you're sort of at a point right now where you could go a bunch of different directions, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be important for you at this early stage and at this young age to pay attention to what really motivates you, and not necessarily where the biggest opportunities are or where the biggest stages are, you know, which are typically like the 100-mile races.
Yeah.
But if that's what motivates you, you know, by all means. I mean, I ran my first 100 when I was like 23 or something like that.
Oh, really? Which one?
Leadville. Yeah.
Dang, that's awesome.
23 or 24. But
yeah,
crazy. I mean, like for me at this point, I've said this to a few people on the podcast, it's like once you get to the place where you are now, it's kind of the next step is to race internationally, you know, go over to Europe and face off against some of the European athletes who are, you know, really, really good, and different types of athletes, as a way to not only learn, but to improve in your career and gain more experience. What does next year look like for you? Have you started putting pen to paper and planning out your calendar?
Yeah. So I've started thinking about it now that JFK is over. You know, so my girlfriend ran Western States last year. That's where I saw you for the first time, actually, when you were in the tent announcing. That was so cool.
Yes, dude.
Yeah. Unfortunately, she ended up dropping out at like mile 55. Just it was brutally hot, and I think we learned a lot. But I think like if I think of the race that I want to do most or that gets me most excited, it's probably Western States. Like I'm afraid to run that far, and like I'd love to say I need another year, but like honestly, in a year, like I don't know what's going to happen in a year. Like I just know right now things are feeling good, and like that's what my priority is right now. Like I kind of want to go for it.
Yes,
I'm thinking about it.
Let's go.
Yeah. I've been thinking about it a lot in the last few weeks, but yeah, it seems scary. Like I never thought I'd want to run 100 like this early. I always said it was going to be like, I don't know, when I'm 27 or 28 or something, but I don't know. I kind of want to do it.
Dude, I mean, again, that's the thing to listen to, man. It's like what inspires you, what motivates you. And it's not like, I mean, you could wait, you could gain more experience doing shorter races. You could go win the Golden Trail Series, you know, sort of a circuit of shorter distance races. But if that's what motivates you, you gotta chase that feeling, man, because that's what ultimately leads to success, you know, when you're driven like that. But obviously you can't just waltz into Western States and say, I'd like a spot, please. So
you got to qualify.
You're probably putting some thought into where you might qualify. I guess probably the next opportunity would be at Bandera in January, or maybe Tarawera in New Zealand in February, or Black Canyon also in February. What are you thinking about for your swing?
Yeah, I think it would either have to be Black Canyon or Canyons. I've been to Bandera. That's how Aaron qualified last year.
Okay.
And I'll be down there pacing a Hoka teammate of mine this year. He's trying to get his ticket.
Nice.
But yeah, I think I can't decide. Maybe I might need your input on this, honestly. Like Black Canyon is in February and then Canyons is in April.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, it would be awesome to have more time to train for this event, like 100K. But then if you do Canyons and qualify, then you have like 8 weeks until states.
It's actually very close. I mean, and one of the things that you should think about, young man, as a grizzled veteran is, I mean, dude, you're fit as hell. You just ran the second fastest time ever at JFK, even though you may have been sitting on the couch for a couple of weeks.
You haven't moved
if you get
much.
back to training for a little bit, you're going to be flaming fit by the time February comes around. You could easily smash Black Canyon. Plus, Black Canyon, I think, topographically mimics Western States fairly well because it's a net downhill.
Yeah.
Plus I think it usually has a little bit of heat too, even though it's early in the season. And then also at Canyons, it may be a little bit too much of a preview of the Western States course.
Yeah. It's like beyond close. Hillier than States.
Yeah. And it's much of it is on the course itself. So if you go deep to the well at that race in April, and then turn around and run much of the exact same course at Western States like 8 weeks later.
Yeah, that seems tough for sure.
Yeah, it seems tough. But well, dude, that's super exciting, man. And as the guy who's going to be shouting into microphones for at least 20 hours come next June at Western States, I would absolutely love to see you on the start line there. And it looks like many of the top 10 finishers from last year are returning, with the exception of Jim Walmsley, but I know like Hayden is all in on Western States for next year, feeling like he kind of missed an opportunity this year. I think Tim Tollefson is going to be going back, obviously a legend of the game himself. And I think you would add a really interesting dynamic to the field. What about like a little bit more longer term? Have you thought about racing in Europe at all? Is there anything else that really like kind of speaks to you on a motivational level about a challenge that you would want to tackle in the future, whether it's a personal project or some kind of race?
I think if I didn't do states this year, although it seems like that is what gets me most fired up, maybe doing like CCC at UTMB would be pretty cool. That was actually like that's what I was thinking I would do. But then like looking at the winning times of like the average time you run at CCC is pretty similar to states. Yeah. And I was
not much further. Yeah. It's like
so
15 hours compared to 11 hours or something like that.
Yeah. So it would be really cool to run CCC or, I guess I'll have to see like if I end up running states and like enjoy the 100-mile distance. But like shorter trail races that look really cool in Europe would be like Sierra Zanal would be a really, really cool one. And then it would be neat to try to do like how Hoka had the Project Carbon X with the 100K. I'd love to try to like actually run it if they put it on again. This year I paced it, which was super cool.
Okay.
I got to pace Walmsley for 35 miles. At like 5:53 pace.
Oh my God, dude. I can't even tell you how much money I would pay to watch you and Walmsley and Hayden like go out there and really push each other for that one.
Oh man, I have to figure something out because at JFK my calves hurt so bad the last 8 miles. Like, and that's only 35 miles of pavement. Not even pavement, it's like crushed gravel. So yeah, if I did the 100K on the road, I'd have to figure something out. Do more calf raises.
Yeah. Well, get in the gym, man. But I think again, dude, you could go so many different directions. And even if you do Western States this year, you could easily, I think at your age and with your talent, turn around the next year and go after the Golden Trail series and do Sierra Zanal and the Mont Blanc Marathon and Zagama and maybe come back to the Pikes Peak Marathon. I mean, you should really put a lot of thought into the whole arc of your career, start writing down what you want to achieve, because I really do think the sky's the limit for you, dude. I think you should even think about things like comrades and like the 100K World Championship, and then ultimately get out to UTMB, man. I think, at your age, obviously don't get greedy. don't rush anything. You got plenty of time to do everything, but I think you've got the talent to really make your mark on the sport and in the history of the sport. So,
dude, well, thank you. Yeah, I hope so. We'll see. Yeah, it's been a good year so far, but yeah, it's hard. Trail is funny. Like, you know, coming from track and field or cross country, like everyone's just shooting for like the Olympics or the world championships.
Right.
But trail, it goes so many different ways. And it's cool.
It's so much better.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. I almost wish though that there was like one event that they're like, all right, this is it. Like,
well, UTMB is that. UTMB is
that's
that.
what.
Yeah.
Well,
man,
cool.
It's really fun to get to know you, dude. I really do. Just like appreciate your time and also think that you've got the world at your doorstep, and it's going to be fun to sort of follow the arc of your career. I actually want to just read your caption from the JFK 50 because I thought it was also great from your Instagram post. And what you said is, thank you to my friends and family for believing in me. Thank you to Hoka for taking a chance on me this year. Your support has changed my life. Thank you to Runner's Edge Montana for giving me the flexibility to chase my dreams. This year has been a big leap for me. I've put in more time and miles than ever for these moments, but it honestly doesn't feel like a grind. I love this sport. Yes. JFK 50, 5 hours, 19 minutes, 39 seconds. And now my calves have turned to stone. And man, it makes me so happy, dude. You carry the vibe, you carry the spirit, you know, your love for the trails and our awesome sport is palpable. And I think that's going to lead to a lot of big things in the future. So yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. It's been great to chit chat and look forward to continuing to follow your career.
Yeah. Thanks so much, man. Yeah. Hopefully we can convince more college dudes to do trail. I love that.
Yeah. If it's up to you and I, the next few years are going to be very exciting. So thanks again, dude.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, man.